Well, there were three guys. One was a black guy. One was a kind of rough sort of construction type looking guy, and me, whatever the hell I was. And everybody did their own thing. The black guy actually was a really good dancer, and so he really did dance. And the other guy would come out in kind of his construction outfit, but he also could dance too. And then there was me doing my the routines that I did. But there was a finale to this thing, and the finale was called, and as it well should be, the hard-on number. Now the hard-on number was supposed to be with all three of us, of course, and in leather harnesses and stuff. So I thought, well, when we put this together, I really think we're going to get hard on. So we're going to go out and then. It was a dirty theater, actually. Thinking it was black and smutty and yucky. It was not conducive to being in it. But we found that grass helped. So we found that if we smoked just a little bit. Now, I'd never, ever taken any drug of any kind before I performed because, again, I took it very seriously. That was my work. Or whether if I was directing or anything, I never would do any kind of drugs. I would never even have any alcohol when I was working. But this was different. This was something that I felt was only going to work if I took some, and I didn't know it would, but I found, oh yeah, it certainly did. And so, because grass was good then, and I would smoke a little bit of the joint, so would the other guys, and we got hard-ons, and we went out, and people were just dazzled. So I said, fine, we will do this Jack Wrangler, making it big in San Francisco. We went down to a very public, well, first we shoot the guy, meet the guy, very nice guy. We go down to this beach, and the beach is filled with people, mainly guys, because this is San Francisco, and, this is a guy beach mainly. And there's Jack Wrangler, who is now the 5-minute darling of San Francisco, and everybody wanted to come around and watch, and he's blowing me at this time. I'm thinking, well, do you want me to sign something? I don't know. I'm trying to handle it, and be polite, at this same time, because I hate it when people aren't. And so we actually did all that. And, after a while, I thought, this is really funny. And I kind of got into it. I thought, well, who else and where else and why not? And, once in a lifetime, fine. So I actually consciously went about creating what would Jack Wrangler be if there was a Jack Wrangler, and I thought, well, his voice would be deeper and kind of well modulated, and then there would be he would move like he was stocky, and squint. There was a Wrangler squint. I would squint when I saw it. I mean, also because he smoked, and so there was always a squint. Of course, you always saw the thumb and forefinger thing, and the squint and the look, and that kind of thing. It worked then. It's also silly now, but at the time it sort of came together. And then there was something about my walk that was like a lumbering thing that made me appear larger and bigger than I was. Part of that was conscious, but the other part was arthritis. I developed really bad arthritis in my hips, and it was becoming very painful for me to walk. So people would always talk about the Jack Wrangler walk. I remember it was described in some magazine as the walk of a constipated penguin, which was particularly flattering, but I thought, well, that's something. But it really was arthritis, and about a year into this so-called career of mine, I had to have one hip completely replaced. And I remember when I did, I said, we can't have a scar. I said, however you do this, we gotta, the orthopedic surgeon was so nice and so great, and it was probably the most minimal scar that he could possibly do on the scene. Of course, this was one of the so many firsts. This is one of the first hip replacements too. It was very early. I've always said it was made out of paper mache, but it was not made out of the titanium and all the stuff they have now. And years later, I ended up having the other one done and then this one done again. So I've had 3 hip replacements, which is on 2 legs, nothing in the middle. was another thing about the characters. He was really into himself. As far, I mean, his sensuality stemmed from the that he dug himself physically, and so he was generally kind of all over himself, and he became his masturbatory techniques were legend. So I remember once they put me on a hill, and the whole first scene was supposed to be me masturbating, and a belt that they'd found that was a designer belt where I was going to use the buckle and everything to make it more exciting look or something. And all of a sudden there was this noise, and there were these two rattlesnakes right next that had suddenly decided to mate while all this was going on. And I always wondered whether I actually encouraged them or not. So there was the thing of being very self-involved and very kind of aloof in a way, warm, but the masturbatory part was big. And these were going to be sold by mail order, so we took out mail order ads in all the gay rags, and we not only sent them, we did something that nobody else was doing. The minute they requested something, we sent everything out before their checks even cleared, because we figured the faster they get it, the more impressed they're going to be. And I think during 3 or 4 years of doing this, maybe 3 checks bounced. I mean, it was remarkable that we very seldom got stung. The types of characters that I played had to be characters that would be a gay man's fantasy. I mean, if I say this, I don't mean it to be derogatory in any way, but gay man's fantasy is generally not a florist or a hairstylist. You know, it's generally somebody who has a kind of rugged connotation to him, and somebody that the sex is going to be furtive, and it's going to be powerful, and it's going to be a moment in time that happens in some remote area that you you never forget as long as you live, something like that. And so all the characters had to be somebody that, whether he was a drifter or whether he was a sailor or whether most of my films I was not a romantic lead in them, although there was a film called Navy Blue, which I was romantic in it. That was very funny, Navy Blue, because the first scene, the sex scene in it, I played a sailor in New York on leave, and the first sex scene in it was to be in a helicopter as they're flying over the city of Manhattan and showing the sailors the city. While they're showing it to it, this guy is blowing me in the helicopter, and the only way they could do this was actually go down to the pier and rent not only the helicopter but take the tour. So we come up in our sailors' outfits, which I don't think looked too authentic because we also had all this makeup on and everything. But there we were in our sailors' outfits, and we got on. They said they would like to see the city, and the cameraman, and we'd like to photograph them watching the city. So the cameraman got in the front of the helicopter with the pilot, and they had a cameraman. So we had the director, the cameraman in the front with the pilot, and us. Me and this other guy in the back seat, and we take off, and now we're flying over the city, and the director pretends like he's the tourist of the world. He said, "Oh, what's that down there? What's that down there?" Asking the pilot, so he'll keep his eyes on the road, right, and not on the back of the thing. In the meantime, this guy, there's 13 buttons on this damn sailor's thing. He's trying like hell to get the thing open in time before this guy the pilot starts wondering what the hell's going on. He gets the thing open, he blows it. There's no way I'm going to get the thing closed before we land. And so we just, they do it. This is absolutely on film. There I am going over the city, and we got down there, and then I just had to put my pants back on. And by that time, how could he object? A lot of the guys that were in the films with me were hustlers, because that's the way primarily the way one made his living, and they could, by making a porn film, they could up their ante so that they would get more money for performing in the film as a hustler, so that they could say, gee, you're going to get so-and-so who was starred in such and such a film. And so it was economic sense to them. But that was one of the things that happened. They would go and go to their real job after we were finished making the film. And so it was a different world for me than it was for them. And I felt like an outsider because of that too. I felt that I was a fraud in that area. Because here these guys were the real thing. I mean, they were living the life of a porn star, or how people thought they might live. I mean, their day was like wall-to-wall sex. When they finished one kind of sex, they were out having sex with somebody else for money. I felt like I was on the outside looking in. I thought, these are the real guys. I'm just pretending I am. I'm faking it. And it didn't make me feel better about myself. It made me feel worse, embarrassed me, because I thought, I can never be these guys. Silver Lake is an actual area of Los Angeles, and very nice area of Los Angeles. And there was a bar out there that they wasn't doing all that well, and they wanted to call it Jack Wranglers and have a kind of Western motif. So we had caricatures done of all my different films, and Bob was always classy when you see. He had caricatures done of the different films of mine and had them all on the walls, sawdust on the floor. And the whole rule of the joint was that the bartenders had to be really warm and friendly to everybody. They couldn't let anybody just sit alone there. I mean, I went and sat with all these people and said, this is the way this has got to work. And that if you see somebody that's by themselves, you got to introduce them to somebody else. And it was a very unusual bar that way. It was people felt comfortable there because they wouldn't let them be aloof. And it was nice. I think it lasted for about 2 weeks. Oh yeah. Oh, that was a thing. The Jack Wrangler Fraternity. There was a Jack Wrangler Fraternity, and you could even get if you got to a certain plane in the Jack Wrangler Fraternity. So it wasn't a pyramid scheme or anything. Whether you could get to a certain plane, you would get a little necklace thing that had, I guess, JF on it or something. And it was very nice. And people would book these tours, and I would host them. And we'd get on boats and go somewhere. And I would be the sort of charming guy that was on this and greet them when they came to thing, and then go with them on the tour stuff and all that. And yeah, we did that for a while. It was a lot of work. and people weren't always that easy on those things. They got pretty demanding about the services they wanted and all that. Well, during the time of 70s full blossoming of all the possibilities sexually, the gay community really outdid themselves with the cleverness that they managed to come up with all the things. There was a thing that there was a party every year here in New York called the White Party. And there was a black party too, but the White Party. And it took place in this huge, huge place. I know that the ceiling was higher than the Hayden Planetarium. I just can't remember where the hell the place was. But it was this monster place, and the thing really didn't get underway until about 11 o'clock. And this was this huge, it was like a stadium. And everything would be going on at once. Of course, they'd had male strippers that were doing all over the place, but they had people that actually performed live sex acts on the stage in various ways, and of course the audience was doing all of that too. And of course, there was lots of drugs and lots of, I'm sure, my products around. And I was asked to do to perform at the White Party one year, and I said, well, what exactly do you want me to do? I don't really do live sex on stage. I think it's just swell that everybody else does, but that's not something I'd be quite comfortable with. They said, no, no, what we want to do is we want to build this kind of tower. And at one point, we'll introduce you, and you'll walk up this long kind of flight of stairs, almost like a pyramid. You get to the top of it, and there you are. And we want to lower a saddle from the ceiling. And then we want you to get on the saddle with a rope, and then we're going to take you up in the air, and we're going to fly you over the stadium. And as we get to different balconies, you can lasso people. And so, I thought, well, how many times you get a chance to do something like that? I thought, this is, so how many times do you want me to do this in the night? And they said, actually twice, early in the evening, which means like around 11:30, and then about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I thought, wonderful. And there was a rehearsal for it. And I remember arriving in the afternoon, and they had built this very high platform that was about, well, the balcony of our apartment is about 5 stories high, and I think that's about what this was. And this long flight of stairs that I would climb up regally, and then stand at the top of the stairs, and then look up, and down would come the saddle, which they lowered in. And but before I even got up to the top of the stairs, I thought, this is really, really scary. I'm looking down and saying, that's a hell of a long way down there. And there weren't any people there yet. And so I get up to the top of this thing, and down comes the saddle. And I got on the saddle, and I thought, you don't ever, there were 4 ropes, I remember, and I found that if I grabbed one rope, the whole damn thing flipped over. So you didn't do that. You had to make sure that you stayed steady with the thing, and you didn't pull or tug one rope or another. And then up you went, and once I got into the thing, I said, well, this is kind of cool. And then they lowered me back down, and then somebody helped me off the saddle, and I said, I can do this. Well, that night, we all were in a kind of big dressing room upstairs, all the different people that were going to do various acts. There was an awful lot of coke going around that dressing room, and everybody was really partying. And I thought, well, a little courage, it would be nice. And so I took a little sniff of the stuff, and I thought, now I really want to do this. This is going to be the crowning glory of my career. And so I, with all the confidence that coke can give you for a moment, walked out, did the climb up the stairs, and I think I ripped off my shirt. I was really getting with the thing. And down comes the saddle, and instead of getting right on it, I grabbed the stirrups and said, take it up, and I hung from the stirrups and let it fly me over the thing, swinging from the stirrups. And I look down now, and I'm seeing this sea of thousands of people dancing, generally with their little jack blasters or their amyl products, in their nose, and nobody's looking up. And I'm thinking, they're the stars of this thing, not me. They don't give a damn that I'm being flown at my own peril over the top of this thing. And it was so depressing, and it was such a downer, and it put me in my place so much. I thought, I may die tonight, and what will happen is I will fall, and they'll just clear an area as I hit the ground, and then they'll just dance. And I thought, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I still had to get on the damn saddle. So they brought the thing, came back down. I now very gingerly climbed on the saddle, and I started going up. And I did, in my thing, my earnestness to hold on to something, I grabbed one of the ropes, and the thing did flip. Now I'm sort of halfway upside down, thinking it's over, I'm going to die here again, and nobody is going to even notice. So I managed to get the thing back up again. I went for one sort of feeble lasso or something, and then and said, let's go down, and went down. Carefully got it. Now I was afraid to even walk back down the stairs. And then I went to the owner of the thing and said, that's it. That's my one time. There is not going to be a second performance tonight, and that was it. So we went on thinking, now came the part of the penetration, and they explained to me which of the China sisters I was to penetrate and sort of where. And I kind of felt around first, and found out, that works. And then I did a sort of oral thing, so I knew so that's what that is. And and then so now we have to stop, and I had to get hard, and I did that. Geez, I'd forgotten that in Two China Sisters, it was there. I was playing a guy who was a gay man. The two China sisters were going to turn straight. That was the plot. Damn, it's funny you forget things that are so important. I'd forgotten that completely, but I think that was probably what the idea is why they brought Jack Wrangler into it, because it was, of course, it was the perfect crossover for me, because now Jack Wrangler was going to be made straight. It's just like that man who was the head of the evangelistic thing that, that had sex with that prostitute, and then he went away for a month with some sort of a reader or something and came back, and now he's entirely straight. In every X-rated film, where it's gay or straight, there is what's called the money shot. And the money shot means when you have an orgasm. And a guy has to have a visual orgasm. Otherwise, the person that's watching the film thinks the thing's been faked. And so he has to come all over something. In a gay film, you're really creative of what you come over. I mean, just any tables and chairs, and, furniture and people and stuff. And in a straight film, it's generally the woman's face or chest or tits. That's a little more specific, but you have to do that. The money shot to me was just always a matter of when, because that was something that I was always sort of. I was a healthy guy, and I just felt like there wasn't a problem for me when I went into the straight films. It still wasn't a problem for me because it was masturbatory, and that was basically the same thing. What you do is you come out and then you masturbate until you're about ready to go, and then they turn the camera on and you shoot it. So it's not like you got to do it within one shot or something. Although in the gay films I could if I was asked to. There was a girl. I remember the first day I met her on the set. She introduced herself to me, and she said, "My name's Annie Sprinkle," and I said, "I beg your pardon," and she said, "My name's Annie Sprinkle," and I said, "Oh, that's nice," and she said, "Well, it's really not my name, but it's because of what I do," and I said, "Oh," and her specialty was peeing on people, and I never was. I never benefited from that specialty, but I may have been in some films that somebody did, because I know she was in some of my films. It was very difficult for people to understand how a gay man could commit to a monogamous straight marriage, and I wouldn't think most men could, but I wasn't one man because I was narcissistic, so I was several. And the idea of committing to Margaret, our relationship was based not on sex. It was based on this great zest for living that we both had, and loving the same things, and professionally admiring each other. She more in the directorial writing sense with her, but I admired her so much as an artist, and we worked together a lot, because I would start writing acts for her, which she loved because she loved the humor and stuff in them, and traveling together, and we the kind of people that if we saw a movie by ourselves, we would never appreciate until we saw it together. If we didn't share a moment together, we were just furious that the other one wasn't there. And we've been that way for all of these years. We wake up in the morning and look at each other and giggle. Now there's a lot of reasons to, because we're falling apart, but we get such a kick out of one another. And I don't want to overdo that, because that you always say that you hear, especially performers say that, and then the next week they're divorced. But it always was based on this great joy we had with one another. Great fun. I insisted for paying for just about everything when I moved in with Margaret, because that was going to be one thing I wasn't going to let anybody get me on, that I was spending her money in any way. We've never, ever had a joint bank account of any kind. She's always had her own stuff, and I've always had mine, and that's the way we've been for all the years we've been together. But at that time, I was really adamant about it. And the only way I really could do that was I had credit, good credit, but no money, really. And so I had maybe 50 credit cards, and I just kept running them up and running them up. And I spent 25 years paying off those credit cards. I would be damned if I was ever going to file a bankruptcy or not pay them. I paid the minimum on each one of those damn things for 20 years until I paid them all off. And I finally did. But I just made sure that Margaret was what I wined and dined her, that I picked up the check everywhere, that I bought her lovely things, that Christmas was like no Christmas she ever had. I mean, I really tried to compete with her Beverly Hills childhood almost. And then Margaret was Margaret would feel guilty then that she got so many, but not just from me. I mean, Christmas used to look like Christmas with Ed Sullivan. I mean, there would be all these packages, like hundreds of them, because she had so many friends, and I guess I had a few, but we got just stuff from everyone, and it was really gross. And I was the one that insisted on getting these huge trees and having these huge Christmas parties where Rosemary Clooney would sit at the piano and sing White Christmas. I mean, we really did it, and it was all too much back to wardrobe. The whole thing was. But I was very, very important to me that I hold my own during this relationship. When you live in New York City, if you're going to have a dog, you have to walk it, and that means well, it's an enormous responsibility having a dog. You got to get up in the morning and walk the thing, and then you got to do it again at night. Or you can hire a dog walker to do that, but then you've also supposed to kind of be there when he comes home, which was also a problem for us. And you just can't do that. And having a dog in the city I think is kind of rough. Also expensive. So we decided to have something else, and we weren't really crazy about cats because if somebody has a cat before you even open the door generally when you go to their house. And so we thought, what else could we have? And people had said that rabbits made very good pets. So we got this Lop bunny who was just wonderful. If you've ever been dry licked by a bunny, it's sort of a combination of sandpaper and something else. They're just full of love, these things. And Bunny was extra full of love. He attached to me right away because I housebroke him to an extent. I mean, I was the guy that I sat with a bottle of wine all day, and kept putting him into the cat box every time he started to drop something, which is only alfalfa anyway, so it goes in and comes right back out. But you put the thing in, and he finally got the idea, and he thought that I was God after that, and fell very much passionately in love with me. And we didn't have Bunny fixed right away, and he would sit in the living room and he would stare at me, and his eyes would start to glaze over, and then all the love he could muster, and then he'd jump up in the air and spray all this stuff all over the room. And we would keep saying, no, but Margaret would be coming in, and the person said, oh, no, Bunny, oh, Jesus, oh, no, Bunny. And a lot of times he would jump in the air, and he wouldn't necessarily land back on the carpet. We had a big glass table. He generally landed right in the middle of that. He wasn't exactly a gazelle, and so we figured that before we had Bunny fixed, like he should have one fling, and there was a woman on the other side of the building that had a rabbit. But this was a rabbit. I mean, we had a bunny, that real cute little this was a rabbit, a big rabbit that she'd had for a lot of years. And his name was Floppo. And Floppo had no personality at all. And he would just sit there, and she'd throw vegetables on the kitchen floor, and the thing would eat it, and that was kind of the extent of what he did. But I said, bring Floppo over to Bunny, and let Bunny have one moment of ecstasy before we cut off his thing. And so she brought Floppo over, and Floppo was a boy, and so was Bunny, but apparently it didn't make any difference to Bunny because he'd never seen anything that even resembled a bunny. And there was Floppo, who was very indifferent, but nevertheless he was there. And so she brought Floppo in, put him on the floor. Floppo looked at Bunny and thought, well, that's the silliest thing I ever saw. And Bunny was just thrilled. He was just overwhelmed. He immediately jumped on the Floppo's head from the front and humped him. And then he went, and do you know that rabbits scream when they come? It's the only time they actually make noise. They go, ah, and then they pass out, which is really funny. And Margaret and I are sitting on the couch, and we're watching this, and we are hysterical watching Bunny make it with Floppo's head. And then Bunny goes, ah, and passes out, and Floppo is just dripping with this stuff all over his face, with this look of, what the hell was that? And Bunny is, he's up and everything, and he comes back to life, and he's ready to go again. The woman took Floppo away, and the next day we had Bunny fixed. And poor thing, he sat under a table for a week. He just felt something was missing, but he couldn't quite identify it, Most of the time when I was on these talk shows, not all the time, but most of the time, I was on, and suddenly somebody would accuse me of bringing the moral standards of the country, let alone the world, down below ground level. And I understood how people felt about that sort of thing, and I understood. My dad had done many articles about not pandering to the lowest common denominator, trying to do films, and he did films that did have a social significance and did try to inform and bring you up a notch, rather than reflecting public taste, to maybe encourage public to take it up a notch. And there was me doing these films, which certainly was pandering to something. And so I understood how they felt about it, but I did feel a little picked on. And then I remember I was on one show where they had these women on that had been raped, and these people that had been beaten up by people. And I stood up and said, why am I on this show? I don't have anything to do with that. And they're talking about child porn or anything. I said, I have nothing to do with any of this stuff. I'm on the wrong show. It was an awful thing. And that one I was really embarrassed about. But most of the time I just said, well, I know that people have their own taste in different things. And this is I feel that what is obscene is people blowing each other up on television shows and shooting each other in the face. For me, having sex on the screen is not obscene. But I can understand if somebody else feels it is and would rather see somebody blow their face off. There you are. But I do not think that it encourages people that see sex on the screen to go run out and rape somebody. As a matter of fact, it generally means that they're going to masturbate and they're not going to go out at all. It was a cheap shot on both of our parts. Years later, when my dad was not well, my wife, Margaret Whiting, said, you got to go out and meet your father. She said, if this man dies and he hasn't gotten to know you, you're never going to forgive yourself, and it's going to be this great, great tragic loss in your life. And so I flew out. By that time, he was living in Indian Wells, which is part of north of Palm Springs. And I flew out there, and I spent 2 weeks with him. And I remember saying, we could have had a hell of a time together. I love all the same things you do. I'm so enamored of what you've done and so proud of you. And I love the film industry. He really got a kick out of me. Because my personality then had kind of sort of blossomed after all this stuff. And so this new self-assured guy that was almost a jock, only in a different way, that Dad had always pictured, was there and happy and had a great sense for living. Plus, his father-in-law, my wife's father, had written "Hooray for Hollywood," for Christ's sake. So it was like this wonderful relationship that we had for about 3 weeks, and then he died. He had an operation. And when he came out of it, I was there. And my head was against his shoulder. And he said, "Who would have thought it would have been you?"